that have not done a reassessment since in the 1950s. Okay? What happens to those counties? It's not good. I'll give you an example. They go to the base level year of the reassessment. That would be back in 1955 prices. So a guy that comes in and builds $1 million house, they get reverted to 1955 prices. Now, is anybody here that's elderly, live on a fixed income, has an older home? Okay. So they take these prices back to the 1950s. Now, what do? They raise mills. Your property may be worth $60,000. His worth $1 million. And there's not much of a gap there. The only difference is they keep raising the mills, which affects you on the lower side. Okay? That's one reason. Another reason why I decided, I voted for a reassessment is the fact that you can have people appeal their values. And if they're justified, they get what they call a discount, a common level ratio, reduced price. When I voted against it in the beginning is because I didn't understand this. When I sat on my first board of appeals and saw a company come in that 4 years ago was 1.1 million, and now they're asking to be down to 435,000, I have an issue with that. And they could be. So they were already down $600,000 in assessed values. So what's that mean? That means they raised the mills on everybody. That's not fair. All right, so that's why we believe the assessment is necessary. We still believe it's necessary, but probably not at this time. And I'll let Cassie please stand up. Cassie is our main assessor. She is very, very knowledgeable, and she's going to be available for questioning towards the end, or at any time once we open this up. You can direct all your questions to any one of us, and especially the congressman, okay? This could be a nightmare. I feel that we have the momentum now, moving forward, with the help of Congressman Moreno, our legislators, that we're going to take this, we're going to solve this problem, because it is a problem, all right? Make no mistake, this could be a nightmare. And I'm sure there will be questions and answers at the end, so we'll open that up. Now I would like to introduce Fran, and she's going to tell you basically what's going on here with the National Flood Insurance.
A lot of you, oh.
I just want to be clear on something real quick.
Yes.
Like you guys, by moving forward with the
Reassessment
assessments, has brought this down on us?
No.
Okay.
The reassessment and the flood insurance are two different things.
Okay.
But what we're concerned about is by creating a problem with the values of properties in the floodplain. For instance, Jersey Shore, where 50% of your properties are in the floodplain. By doing that, from the flood insurance side, it's depressing the values of the floodplain properties. And what happens to Jersey Shore School District or the borough when they have to make up revenue to operate and they lose revenue in the floodplain? They have to raise taxes on everybody else. That's our concern. The reassessment did not do.
Yeah, Fran, we didn't know about this when
No.
the reassessment was announced. We did not know the disaster that was headed our way. So we got caught up as far as the reassessment goes with this. They're not related, except they are related because you can't do one with too many unknowns.
So that's why you're saying that's why it's on hold.
Why we're
We have to
considering
vote
it.
on but it's pretty certain that we're going to put the brakes on. We have to.
Well, right now, I'm going to do a real quick, what is BW12? And I apologize for my voice, I've had a cold. But Biggert Waters 12 is the Reform Act for the National Flood Insurance Program. In 1967, nobody had flood insurance because they couldn't afford it. So Congress looked out and saw these damages due to floods and said they had to come up with some way to help people afford flood insurance. So they developed the National Flood Insurance Program. It passed in 1968. In 1972, we had Agnes, but hardly anybody had flood insurance even then. So there was a lot of damage. The government came in to help with it, but we didn't have coverage to help pay for it. So in 1973, Congress required, if you have a federally backed mortgage, that you would also be required to carry flood insurance. So that's what tied flood insurance to your mortgage. So fast forward to 2014. We still have all of these houses in the floodplain, and in 1968, Congress assumed that over time, people would do things like raise their house and get rid of their basements when they were damaged, that they would mitigate. And it really has not happened in the boroughs and the older communities within our county. After Katrina, well, leading up to Katrina, there were about 5 or 6 major storms, and then Katrina hit. National Flood Insurance went into debt. Up till that point, generally you'd have bad years and they'd be in debt, and then you'd have good years and they'd pay the Treasury back. It was always a self-sustaining program. Well, since Katrina, we have been hit with one major disaster after another. After Katrina, we had a year where we had epic floods on the Mississippi. You remember that? They were blowing the levees to lower the water level. Well, that was an epic flood, and there was a lot of damage. Then we had Hurricane Sandy. The bill was passed right before Hurricane Sandy hit, and it just devastated the Northeast. So we had a problem where suddenly National Flood Insurance was $24 billion in the red. And we're in a tough economic time. Congress said now it's time that we have to figure out how to pay it back. I do not believe they fully understood the problem that we have here in the Northeast. In the Northeast, most of our floodplains are our old historic boroughs. They're the same boroughs that had the same basements and the same housing stock as we had in 1967. And not much has changed. According to our floodplain ordinances, this is a big one, basements are not allowed in the floodplain because what you have is hydrostatic pressure and basements blow in. I can show you picture after picture after picture of homes with holes under the basement when there's flooding. And it doesn't take much water to do that. So our problems here in Jersey Shore and in Muncie and Montgomery and a lot of our older communities is that we have houses that have floodplain and then we have a basement. And how FEMA is rating flood insurance now starts at the base flood elevation, the elevation of the 100-year flood, and then they start counting down until they hit the top of your basement. So a lot of you in Jersey Shore, you might have 2 or 3 feet of water around your house. And I believe you if you say that the previous owner told you in '72 it didn't hit the first floor. I believe you. But what happened is you have that 2 or 3 feet, and then you have 7 feet underground. Suddenly, you're looking at being 10 feet below the base flood elevation, and for every foot you're below, the insurance rate goes up. Every foot you're above, if you have no basement, every foot you're above, your insurance goes down. So our problem here in Lycoming County and most of Northeast in the country, because we're all towns that were built in the 1700s, our problem is that we have these basements, and it gives a very deep look at what the distance below the base flood elevation is. And that's where you begin hearing these stories of people that have $5,000, $10,000, $12,000 insurance premiums because you'll start it at $1,000, and then it'll go to $2,000, $3,000, $5,000, $10,000. It's a problem. I don't think anybody really understood how this would be calculated. And across the country, basements are not usual. So I think when FEMA was looking at this, they thought, well, most people don't have basements, so it's not going to be a problem. It is a problem for us. And that's the story of Bigger Waters 12. And that's where we are right now. I do understand that Pennsylvania has accepted a private insurance company, although there are issues with some banks accepting that. And we have to figure that out, because in the Bigger Waters legislation, it says that if there is a private insurer that gives you the same coverage as a FEMA policy, you can go with the private insurer. And this private insurer has only been in Pennsylvania for about maybe 60 days.
Since December 1st.
December 1st, so even less than that, 30 days. But it is an option. So you know that there are options out there. But it doesn't cover structures that are repetitively damaged, which means you've had 2 floods within the last 5 years, or if you're severely damaged. The good news for you in Jersey Shore is unless the river is at full height, the borough itself does not flood very often. And that's the good news for Jersey Shore. We do have some areas along Washy Run that get hit all the time, but by and large, I got a printout of the payments to the different municipalities, and I think Jersey Shore had $1.2 million paid out since 1978. Muncie had $5 million. 2 different types of boroughs, 2 different types of levels of water. So, I mean, that's good news for you guys if you want good news. But that's all I have to say, so holler if you have any questions.
I got one. That
Yes.
elevation, I was told that's taken off the basement floor,
Yes,
not the top of the cellar.
the basement floor,
Really?
the top of the bottom of the basement. Yeah. It's the basement.
What's the name of the private insurance company in Pennsylvania?
I am not sure. Josh knows, but
Lloyd's of London, and you can find them at privatemarketflood.com. There's a link on there for the Pennsylvania information, and the privatemarketflood.com. Privatemarketflood.com.
I'm sorry.
Who actually did the calculation, and then who reviewed it, and then who approved it?
For what? What
What
calculation?
you just reviewed.
Oh, you mean the base flood elevation?
Right.
That was a study that was done by Susquehanna River Basin Commission for Jersey Shore. It was done probably in about 1975, although USGS and Susquehanna River Basin has done a lot of work in Jersey Shore, and they feel that that's still a very valid study. That elevations are still very valid. But that's been your elevation since 1975.
But to get it on a property requires a surveyor to get
Yeah.
that
To
certification.
figure out where you are in the base flood
They
elevation.
want everybody to do that too,
Yes, they do.
out of